Let me ask you, how are fighting games distributed? Well, back in the day, the premier method was giant arcade cabinets housing the best the genre had to offer. When they were squished down and brought home, it was primarily done on cartridges, floppies, and there were probably some cassettes, right? Naturally, as technology progressed, we started getting them on discs, and nowadays it doesn't even have to be on physical forms of matter. But let me present a scenario. For a long time, disc-based games were sold on DVDs and Blu-rays from the PS2 to now. What was most often printed on those types of discs? Movies, naturally. What would happen if we were to just smush them together? No, I'm not talking about something like the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection with the Street Fighter 2 animated movie as a bonus, or I'm sure there's some special edition out there that included a separate disc with a movie. I couldn't actually find an example. I'm talking a Schrödinger situation where it's both a game and a movie simultaneously. Alright, you're not stupid. You've seen the thumbnail and you figured out where I'm going with this. It's Tekken Hybrid, a PS3 hybrid disc containing the movie Tekken Blood Vengeance, a demo for Tekken Tag Tournament 2, and an HD remaster for the original Tekken Tag Tournament. For a series that so rarely re-releases any of its games, it was pretty surprising to see Tekken Tag get the remaster treatment. I'm sure it wasn't that expensive to throw it together, but you'd think Bandai Namco would want to make as much money as possible by not limiting its release. Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection was digital only on PS3, but Tekken Tag HD didn't even get a solo digital release. It was legitimately only released with a movie. The unimportant movie was easier to find, having a standalone DVD, the hybrid Blu-ray, even being included as a traditional bonus on 3DS. And that's why we're not talking about Tekken Tag today.
Tricked ya!
Yes, Tekken Tag HD was only ever released in Tekken Hybrid, but at the end of the day, it is just a remaster of an already existing game. If someone wanted to play Tekken Tag, they still have the option of playing the PS2 version, or maybe even the original arcade. Therefore, it's not exclusive, and it doesn't count. We need something else, a fighting game that was absolutely unequivocally only available as part of a bundle with a fighting game. And I think I've got the only one. To lay down the context, Dot Hack is a multimedia series by CyberConnect 2 and Bandai Namco, spanning manga, anime, and video games, among others, all of which contribute to one overall story. I've played the GU games, and that's it, because Roots was incredibly boring and the EMOC series hasn't gotten a remaster. The series all centers around an MMO called The World that's more than just a game and affects the real-life players logged in as well. For the record, both Dot Hack and the original web publishing of Sword Art Online began at the same time, in 2002. Dot Hack became pretty popular upon release, able to fuel all that extra content very consistently up until 2012, the 10th anniversary, with the theatrical movie Dot Hack Beyond the World. Only in Japan, of course, so the Blu-ray I have here doesn't have subtitles. There are fan subs out there, but I wanted to watch the movie on my TV in proper 3D, so I tried to watch it without any translation. That could be the reason I only got about halfway through, or maybe it was just also very boring. But they knew how to sucker buyers in. Come on, even if you're a Dot Hack fan who saw the movie opening day in theaters and were disappointed, you gotta get the home release too. Not just for the collection, but because a brand new Dot Hack game was included on the disc. I mean, the last game was Link. People needed a new Dot Hack game to wash the taste of that one out of their mouths. And yeah, this hybrid disc was the only way it was released. It never made it to other platforms, it never got a standalone release, not even digital. It is a true movie exclusive. Welcome to the world of Dot Hack Versus. Now, while the Dot Hack series prior to this point had all been RPGs of some fashion, it's not unreasonable to expect CyberConnect 2 to be able to deliver on a fighting game. More than any of their own IPs, CC2 is best known for their fighting games, with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, All-Star Battle, and Eyes of Heaven, Demon Slayer The Hinokami Chronicles, and the vast ocean of Naruto. If Dot Hack was ever going to branch out to another genre, this was probably the only thing we could realistically expect. The movie it was bundled with is set in 2024, so keep an eye out for its events in the news any day now, but the game doesn't follow the same plot despite what some English sources claim. I can't say for certain because, as you'd guess, the game is only in Japanese. There is a fan translation available, but I don't think I can install stuff like that on my console, and longtime fans will know I'm not going to want to mess around with emulation. This does, unfortunately and expectedly, mean only Japanese voices as well. I'm a simple man, and I need my Yuri Lowenthal Haseo. Basically, from what I understand, CC Corp has put out a new revision of the world called Versus the World. Presumably, they've had such a big problem with PKers over the years, they're just letting players kill each other as a feature now. And all throughout the story, the servers are routinely being invaded by a hacker, shown by these interruptions by Tokyo. Yeah, a lot of Dot Hack fans call him 9, but his name is written as Tokyo in English in the character select, and all the games he was in were never translated, so I'm sticking to Tokyo. Those brief fights are the only bits of story there are. Seriously. The rest of story mode is simply fights against the rest of the cast. Oh, but it's not actually the original characters, I don't think. At least from the player perspective, they're all selectable characters, so I think it's actually supposed to be an in-universe fighting game using major figures from across the series. I know it's been an established thing in Dot Hack that similar character archetypes exist, but these are supposed to be those exact characters, so I really hope they got paid for their image. So the story mode is just, you're playing a character who's playing a game the same way you do when you play the game.
We're through the looking glass here, people.
Now, the roster itself is fine. It's small, a total of 8 characters, but they nicely cover Emok, Sign, GU, Quantum, Link, and Beyond the World. Obviously, this was meant to be a small-scale game, so with that expectation, I can't say any of the picks are bad or that I have better ones. The problem is that there's not a lot of variation in the characters chosen. Technically not this game's fault, but Kite, Sakuya, and Sora all take very similar design cues. In the plot of Beyond the World, Sora is literally using Kite as her avatar, which is why Balmung and Orca appear in her specials too. At this point, if nearly half the roster is going to be so visually homogeneous, might as well also include Tri-Edge. By the way, this is a side note, but aside from having a nearly identical design to Kite, Sora is also the name of a different important Dot Hack character that may or may not also be in this game, so that's just unfortunate. I'm not saying they all play identically, their specials are different and that gives them unique game plans, but they all share a basic similarity. They're all dual wielders, and that extends to Haseo too. Their normals all feel similar, which really buries their differentiating traits. And it bothers me because the other 4 characters are not only not dual wielders, but they're all different from each other as well. So they have the ability to make characters that feel different, but half the characters, the protagonists, don't get that luxury. The only reason I dwell on this so much is because of the structure of story mode. See, characters don't enter the picture until they're needed. You'll only start fighting them when you're ready to unlock their route, and beyond that, nearly every fight is against the characters you can already play as, which does extend to the full roster, minus Tokyo by the end. But at the beginning, the only characters you have are the dual wielders. Meaning that for quite some time at the beginning, every fight is both as and against similar characters, which leads to a very repetitive feel. It's a repetition that doesn't go away even as the rest of the roster begins appearing. Sure, this leads to variation in gameplay, but by that point, you've played through most of the story mode. A story mode that is just standard fights with every character over and over. It gets tiring. Almost no story besides extremely infrequent interludes with Tokyo, and the only interruptions are a need to check the forums before being allowed to continue. Well, they did it. They incorporated guess I'll log out and check my emails or something. But it's just going to another menu, looking at the top post, and then back to the grind. The presentation for the optional messages is kinda cute though. Does anything happen in the fights? Well, they have these optional conditions to be fulfilled. I can't read them, obviously, but it's things like win within a certain time limit, use this move a set number of times, even automatic things like infinite meter. It's like a generic version of secret factors in JoJo games, which makes sense because these also appeared in All-Star Battle later. But the only things they seem to unlock seem to be cosmetics for the desktop within story mode, meaning nothing of value. There could be more, but I couldn't tell. I at least never got anything of value that I could see. The only other wrench story mode throws in are stat adjustments in certain fights, just stuff like higher attack power or health regen. Honestly, I never noticed a difference. Until the final boss, that is. Yes, it's a bunch of normal CPU matches up until the final battle where it suddenly becomes some insane bullshit. It's not some new special boss, just Ovan, but with every one of his stats increased at once, permanently in super mode, and with infinite meter. My first time through, I did this with Tsukasa, who I think is just a bad matchup, and it took me a lot of tries and a lot of AI abuse to win. That's really all this mode is. Basically, imagine your standard fighting game arcade ladder, but having to do it with every character on the roster. It was already tiring to do it on my own time, but doing it again for the recording? The thought of why am I putting myself through this occurred to me. It's not long, only a couple hours to fully clear with every character, but the tedium makes it feel so much longer. The presentation is a little neat, but this is a game in the lowest tier of single-player content. Because this is it. That leaves Humble Versus mode. Oh, but for a budget game, it has online, surprisingly. So how do the mechanics feel? Well, no surprise, it feels familiar. CyberConnect 2 has to throw together a small fighting game in a presumably short time frame. The economical thing would be to reuse an engine they had already built and polished on the target platform in mind. And wouldn't you know, by the time .hack Versus launched, the PS3 was already 2 games deep into Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm. The similarities are evident. Though keep in mind, I've only played the first Ultimate Ninja Storm, so that's the only one I can directly compare it to. .hack has one basic attack button, a chargeable launcher that can guard break, a grab, and a basic jump. Each character has access to 3 easy specials from a menu that appears when you hit L1, like Dragon Ball Xenoverse or Kingdom Hearts. Depending on how much meter the player has, they also have access to a cinematic super or an install super. In terms of defensive options, there's obviously a basic guard, but hitting R1 just before getting hit instead does a dodge. If you mistimed it and eat the combo, you can burst for 50 meter. Alright, I'm gonna take a second and be real with you. I bought this game with the intention of making this review, so I was being careful during my first personal playthrough to get my thoughts in order. And they were negative. I felt the combat system was overly simplistic, most of the characters lacked meaningful variety, the specials often couldn't comfortably chain, and there was no combo game. I was fully prepared to slam this game before all of you. But something happened as I approached the end. I started discovering the sauce. I learned that holding a direction while doing a normal auto combo either hard knockdowns or launches the opponent upward instead of far away. Then came the discovery that this height and distance was perfect for catching and continuing the combo. And I figured out how to time a super activation to close it out. Plus, I started doing some real silly shit that the CPU doesn't know how to counter, like this Haseo Infinite. Set up a Scythe Oki on a knockdown opponent, they have to block it, take that time to charge a guard break launcher, continue. So why was I so quick to dismiss this game? Well, it comes down to one problem. The movement. I had just finished Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm at the time, and this felt far more limited. That game has quick flips to move around the field and a super dash to immediately close the distance between opponents, which gave it a great flow. Dot Hack doesn't have that. Quickly double tapping jump does an air dash, but it's not very fast, it doesn't go very far, and it requires 25 meter. For a character like Ovan, the slowest in the game, it felt unbearable. But I got used to it. Most characters fight at close range, so there's no advantage to being far apart and both fighters naturally close the distance. Someone like Ovan, who would be at a disadvantage there, has a few projectile attacks to keep him viable when he can't catch up, but also fights well at close range, so he's not useless when the opponent closes in. I figured out that the air dash isn't meant to be a mobility tool, but it has a hitbox, so it can continue a combo at the cost of meter. I began to appreciate that characters have more specials than Naruto ones, and specials and supers link better as well. There's this mechanic where after using something that costs meter, a portion of it leaves a shadow on the meter that refills faster than it would from nothing, encouraging aggressive meter usage. I'm not the only one who appreciates the game either. I attend FGC locals every week. We primarily play Guilty Gear, Tekken, and Street Fighter, but there's a mystery tournament every week as well. Every once in a while, I'll take the reins, and that gave me a great opportunity to run a location test and get some additional opinions for this review. I'd take Dot Hack Versus, have some people play it a bit and give their thoughts, and then we'd move on to Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax for the proper tournament. But it didn't happen. They had fun with Dot Hack, and we quickly pivoted to running that instead. But what if you don't have a willing local scene, but you want to play? Well, you're in luck. Maybe. While doing research, I found a Discord community that plays the game with members willing to play either through PC emulation or on console. They don't run regular events anymore, but there are still people willing to play if you ask, so I got to try the netcode. The first fight had a full second of input latency, which is a transcendental experience if you've never tried it, but then I switched in as host and it was playable. I've included a link to the server in the description below. So, what is it that's keeping this game down? It's a fundamentally sound game, I learned it and began to enjoy it, but it still has something that dampens the experience. I mean, sure, the limited roster and poor single-player content. It only has like 4 stages. It's still very simple mechanically. I can't prove it, but I've just got a feeling that it's unbalanced. There are a few concrete oddities I know are wrong. Sakuya has Hermit by her side the entire fight who acts independently. He's capable of attacking. You can be in the middle of comboing Sakuya, but if Hermit chooses that moment to attack you, you just have to take it. Sora is unique in that her install isn't a timed buff or transformation, instead leveling up and increasing her stats across the board. It's the only install that carries over between rounds, but she goes down a level if she gets knocked down. Bursts knock down, and there's no teching knockdowns, so approaching an opponent with meter means losing a level. There's no safe moves. Unless you have a chainable command grab, you're eating a counter if they block. But I think it goes deeper than things like that. I love CyberConnect 2. They've made some games I deeply enjoyed and played too much. I've never watched Naruto, but I bought Ultimate Ninja Storm because I like the developer. But I'm not going to kid myself. They make sound yet unremarkable games that are carried by their presentation. Does anyone remember the basic gameplay parts of Asura's Wrath? Was your favorite part of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot mashing the punch button over and over? Do you fondly remember the dungeon design of Dot Hack GU? Now, there's nothing wrong with them making games like that, but we have to see them for what they really are. I bring this up because Dot Hack Versus doesn't have that. It's a competent game without a hook. It looks fine, but it's still a step below the pre-rendered cutscenes of GU. The music is Dot Hack music, but it's low energy and doesn't fit a fighting game. The super animations are unimpressive. From the same studio that brought you this.
Oh, This is that Cyber Connect 2
Oh.
shit. This is that
The wind-up.
Cyber Connect 2 shit.
The only fun bit of attention to detail I've found is with Sora. Every time she levels up with her install, her voice lines and animations change to be more confident. It leaves us at a game without identity. The primary audience is .hack fans, but there's so little representation and fan service, it doesn't do much for them. A casual player doesn't have much to sink their teeth into. Anime arena fighter fans will have a much easier time finding alternatives like, I don't know, Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm. Yeah, .hack versus is better in some ways mechanically, but if that's important, then Kill la Kill If still rules this genre. And that's because it's not a real game. It's a bonus to be included with a movie. Look, the case is a Blu-ray case, the imagery on the box and the front of the case is all based on said movie. The game is just there to be a neat little extra, and that's what it is, a curiosity to look at, find interesting, and move on. Because it's part of a package, a hybrid. And this afterthought remains the final piece of the .hack timeline, the last thing that happens in the world. For a while, it was even the last new piece of .hack media, so good thing we got Last Recode. No, that's a collection of pre-existing games. It doesn't count as new. Nope, Volume 4 is original and brand new, and it's a better farewell to the series. I hope it turns out to not be, but Last Recode is now older than Versus was when Last Recode released. We are in the longest gap between projects. It's all an unknown. I love these hybrid discs. It was such a weird and short-lived initiative by Sony, and there's so little information about it. To the best of my research, there isn't even a fully complete list of all examples, and the lists you do find, I found more games that aren't there. There weren't too many of them either, and most are affordable enough. I kinda want to start a collection, so if you want me to come back for a more comprehensive look, let me know. We can come back. Back to the world.